Hello everybody, I am PhenomSage, and welcome back to another Made in Abyss chapter review. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 33, True Nature of the Mask. And that title is very fitting because that is what I want to focus on in this review, mostly because it's very confusing and I think we will be getting more information on it as we continue through this arc, but the actual properties and the way this relic works is confusing me a bit because not even the main characters, our group, knows what it means themselves, it seems like. And contrary to last chapter, which was easily the best chapter of the series so far, this was a more information heavy and slower, more build-up chapter than what we've gotten in the past few chapters recently. You can tell that this is more so the calm before the storm of the rest of this arc and the rest of this volume, as it puts a lot of pieces into play and starts establishing what will likely be the climax of this arc. Now, the biggest piece of information that we get in this chapter is regarding Bondrewd and his mask and how he's able to transfer his consciousness between all of the praying hands. What does he mean all of them are himself? And essentially we learn that it is the result of an artifact or a relic called the Zoaholic, or the Soul Slave Machine Zoaholic. Now at first I thought they were talking about Bondrewd's mask himself, and that's why he placed it on the other praying hand. That's what allows him to place his consciousness in another being. But Riko describes it as this huge thing, this huge machine almost, that's shaped like a butt or an ass. Or at least that's what I gathered from their explanation of it, and Nanachi almost seems familiar with it. She says, that ass-like artifact, could it unexpectedly be related to him? And judging by her working for Bondrewd for so long, it makes sense that she might have gotten a glimpse of this machine or this artifact while she was working for him. My question really doesn't refer to what it is, but more so to how it works. From what I gather, it seems like it's just this giant machine that almost encompasses the entire layer in some kind of ranged field that allows Bondrewd to insert his consciousness into any of the praying hands at will. And I think it has to be the praying hands, but it might be able to go even further since Riko says it's an artifact that enables you to plant yourself within another person, allowing yourself to increase your own self. So if Bondrewd wanted to, I think he could potentially control or take over anyone, not just one of the praying hands. But I believe that there might be more risks involved in that, which is why he doesn't do it. Because we learn that as someone uses the Zoaholic on other people, their consciousness of selves increases and mixes, which eventually causes the host to go insane. So it could potentially be that Bondrewd has only taken over these praying hands, which might be just creations of his that are almost blank slates, which means that his personality would never be corrupted or go insane. But I will talk about that more in just a bit because I have some speculation on that. Anyways, that's my theory regarding the Zoaholic, because we don't really get a concrete explanation for how Bondrewd is taking over things at will, because we know that it doesn't involve his mask. We'll talk about that in just a second. But we also know that he can't use it to transfer layers. He can only do it on the 5th layer because the force field blocks it or interferes with it. I don't know, but we know that it is limited to the 5th layer, but he can use it at will anytime. That also brings up some other questions. Is it hard-coded to Bondrewd where only Bondrewd can use it? How would that even work? If it's a giant machine, how does he have exclusive control over it, and how does he use it at any time? There's a lot of questions regarding this that I'm sure will be answered in the coming chapters, but it's just interesting to think about. Nanachi also infers that Bondrewd's mask, the only purpose it serves is a symbolic purpose of Prushka's father. The only reason he put it on is to imprint the presence of a father to Prushka, which as we know now was for the sole purpose of completing his experiments on her, whatever he plans to do with that. But there's also questions about what the praying hands are now. Nanachi speculates that the one that they had been fighting last chapter might not have been Bondrewd at all, but instead a praying hand who was posing as Bondrewd. But if that's the case, why was that one talking so much like Bondrewd and yet none of the other praying hands talk like him. Is it intentional? Is it something that he controls? Or is there more to it? This is what I'm talking about. There's a lot of confusing aspects to it, and the way that Nanachi, Riko, and not really Reg, just Nanachi and Riko describe it doesn't make things any clearer because they go back and forth between multiple explanations of what's going on. Are the praying hands just mindless creatures that Bondrewd can overtake at any time? Or do they all have his consciousness and can all pose as him at any time? And if so, why were the praying hands who were experimenting on Reg acting so weird? Why are they acting like creatures almost? There's a lot of questions regarding this device that can be made. I'm sure that they will be answered, but if they're not and you want to give more information and elaboration on this, please feel free. I would love to hear these explanations for how this artifact works. Although, judging by how our main objective is to destroy it, I feel like we'll be learning more about it very soon. So if it is a spoiler, please do not mention it. Going back to Riko's information about what the Zoaholic is and what it does, this leads to a lot of speculation that we can make about Bondrewd's character and if he was always like this. Maybe Bondrewd has used this thing too many times to the point where he is the way he is now. He's willing to push boundaries, do horrible things to get what he wants. And in the diagram, we even see some things that are pretty obviously correlating to Bondrewd's character. Loss of sense of self-boundary, betrayal, collapse of the self. These are all things that relate to Bondrewd's character, and it makes me wonder if we'll see that A, Bondrewd was corrupted by this artifact, and that is the reason why he is the way he is right now, and B, if that is the case, will we see some sort of flashback showing Bondrewd as a normal man? I would be okay with either route here. I would be okay if Bondrewd was smart enough that he never let it corrupt him to the point where he went insane, due to him only using the praying hands to take over their consciousness and not actual people, which would just go to show that Bondrewd has always been like this. He was never really a good person. He's always been willing to push boundaries to get what he wants. But I would also be okay with seeing a more kind and normal Bondrewd turning into this horrible person, just because it adds more complexity and depth to a character that I had written off as just this crazy but awesome badass villain. And it would lead to some amazing flashbacks that we could get in the future. So I am very interested in that. I hope that we see more about at least getting a concrete answer on if the Zoaholic ever did anything to Bondrewd's consciousness. On a slightly unrelated note, but still relating to Bondrewd, Papa's Rod. Why the fuck does Prushka know about Papa's Rod? What is going on here, guys? This scene was played up more for laughs than anything, but I am genuinely wondering why Prushka has seen that. Maybe they've taken a bath together? And if so, I'd be interested in seeing what she thinks about Bondrewd with no armor on. Like, what is he underneath that? Does he have a human body? Does he keep his mask on while taking a bath? This is a small note I wanted to make, but I am just so, like, it was played up for more laughs than anything, but it just really made me curious as to what's going on here, and it made me more scared than anything. During this Papa's Rod conversation, we get a bit more bonding between Riko and Prushka in a flashback that took place before they had ascended the stairs and gotten to Reg and Nanachi's help. And during this bonding, we get a lot of interesting insight into Riko's character and what is driving her now. We've had this conversation a lot over the course of the series about what Riko's true goal is here, and it was able to be inferred that Riko's true goal of reaching her mother, while it was prevalent, it always felt like it was in the back of her mind while actually exploring because of how much fun she was having. Especially on that fourth layer, am I right? And in this chapter, we get the full gist of it from her herself, and we were pretty much right on the money there. Riko admits that her wish to meet her mother always felt like it became an excuse. And right now, even at this point, Prushka was coming up with cute names for what Riko's White Whistle Lord name would be. And Riko even just says, right now, the only reason I even want a White Whistle is so we can go down to the 6th layer. I have no interest in it as a title. we learn that Riko's true goal all along has just been seeking the unknown. Because one flaw I've seen about the series that I just don't understand, and Riko even directly addresses it now, is the likelihood that Riko's mother would be down there and Riko would just throw away what she's doing on her life in Orth just to descend down and find her mother that might not even be there. People claim it's unrealistic and that no child would ever dream of doing that. First of all, this is a completely different world, so you have no idea what the children here are thinking. But second of all, Riko addresses this right here in this line. She says, "You know, I thought that I wanted to meet my mother after becoming a white whistle. I wonder if that's actually the case. It could be that my mom is not the one waiting at the bottom. I know that, but that just makes me even more and more excited." And basically from this line, we can tell that Riko doesn't give a shit whether or not her mother is at the bottom. It would be a bonus because she wants to meet her mother, but what's really driving her is that sense of the unknown, that desire to reach the bottom and see what's down there and get the answers to all of the questions we've been asking over the course of this series. And I've always loved the cave raiders' aspirations and just reasoning for going into the abyss. They go into the abyss more than wanting relics, more than wanting to make money. They go down there to discover the unknown. And that's why we as viewers are reading and watching this series, is because we want to see what's down there. We want to see the unknown. It's just such a great connection that our main character and the world basically feel the same driving curiosity that we as viewers do. It's so good. I just needed to go on a tangent there because I really love the way that Akihito has drawn those lines between the characters and us. Throughout this entire conversation, we get some very emotional and very heartfelt development and bonding between Riko and Prushka, and we can see that they've genuinely become almost best friends, it seems like. While helping Riko up the stairs, Prushka just thinks to herself that Riko is the friend that she's wanted all along. And I love this, but it also makes me sad that they had to include this after we already know the situation that Prushka is being put in right now. And it makes me wonder because later on in the chapter we also get some insight from Reg saying that his primary objective is to protect Nanachi and Riko, but he doesn't want to let Prushka go. He wants to avenge her. He wants to make Bondrewd pay for what he's assuming that he's doing to her. And I just wonder at this point whether or not Reg or anybody else is going to try and save Prushka. Reg seems like he's thinking about it at this point. He wants to go and try and save her and probably bring her down to the 6th layer with us. But I wonder if when the time comes, if he'll actually do it or not. As if we weren't getting enough information in this chapter, they stack up even more on top of it regarding Reg and his incinerator and the charges that he had. Now, I saw this explanation a lot in the comments when I inquired about it before. If this was going to be addressed so blatantly, I would have rathered you guys not told me and just let me see this in the chapter. I thought you guys were implying stuff, but Regs just straight up says it, and so does Riko, that for one, electricity is needed to recharge Reg's incinerator shots, which wasn't really a stretch to make, that was fairly clear. But also Riko addresses that being overcharged at the beginning of the series from the orphanage with all the electricity they put into Reg might have been what caused his memory loss. And this is very interesting because this implies that once Reg uses up all of his incinerator shots, he ends up in the state that he was in at the beginning of the series, which throws out my theory of Reg turning out dead if he runs out of charges. It's more so that he just becomes this useless doll that needs to be charged up again before he can start doing shit again. And this directly ties into this chapter because by the end, Reg needs to charge himself up again. He needs those incinerator blasts to take on Bondrewd if they want to even stand a chance. And assumedly, he ends up taking in that electricity that he needs by the end of the chapter. But of course, nothing can go that smoothly. And at the very last page, we see Reg just black eyes. I don't know what's going on with him, but he says, "Where is this?" And that can be interpreted as, "Where am I?" which was Reg's very first lines when he was recharged back at the beginning of the series. So obviously what you're supposed to think at this point is, oh no, Reg's lost his memory again. And that is not good in this situation. We are in the heart of Ido Front right now. Bondrewd is, who knows where he is or what he's going to do to them when he finds them. And we do not need an amnesia-ridden Reg yet again, someone who doesn't even know who Nanachi and Riko are, or Prushka, or even Bondrewd himself. This is a very bad situation, and I'm not sure if Reg actually lost his memory or not. I don't think it's going to be nearly as severe as it was in the beginning of the series anyways. I just wonder how far they'll take it and how it'll affect the rest of our characters going forward. A few more notes I'd like to make about the chapter before we close off this review. For one, when Reg is trying to sneak into Ido Front, we run into this room filled with just normal people. Normal people who obviously look either very dead or very mind controlled right now. And I would go with maybe a mixture of both, because the main dude that we see is missing a chunk of his head. They're missing a chunk of their head, and they're soaked in liquid feces, which means that they are being controlled at the very least and are not allowed to go to the bathroom or do anything except take care of menial tasks around Ido Front. And further, we see that they have black whistles, but not just any black whistles. They have paper mache black whistles, which assumedly Bondrewd made to allow normal people down into the 5th layer to aid with the management of the base. Or it could be that Prushka just made these for these people just because we see that she wrote on it, "Thank you for always," from Prushka, which means at least Prushka cares about these guys, but clearly Bondrewd doesn't. And I don't know if these whistles were used to sneak into the 5th layer or if they're just not even related. But my question is, who are these people? Are these the people that we see in the Nanachi flashback that have qualms with what Bondrewd is doing? Or are these people that Bondrewd has brought in afterwards, or what? Another hole in that black whistle impersonation theory I had is that black whistles, I don't think they're actually allowed on the 5th layer. We know that Bondrewd wanted to push for them being allowed on the 5th layer, but I think as far as we know right now, the farthest black whistles can go is the 4th layer. Maybe Bondrewd has gotten special permission to allow certain people down into the 5th layer. I have no idea, but right now I think the only people allowed on the 5th layer are white whistles. And one last note I wanted to make. A few chapters back, I was questioning why Ido Front was spinning in the first place. Why does it need to spin? What is the purpose? And now we know that the spinning Ido Front, the base, is spinning at the bottom of the 5th layer for its electricity. It's basically like a turbine. Like, that's what it's being used for. And that makes complete sense. Honestly, I'm surprised that I didn't think of that myself, because I'm such a genius and I always see these things ahead of time, but that makes complete sense and I like that explanation, and it directly ties into the plot of Reg needing to regain his electricity, so it all fits, it all works, I like it. But that's been all for me for this chapter 33 Made in Abyss review. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was a bit of a slower chapter, but I'm sure these next few chapters will make up for that and pick up the pace, get into these crazy events. So thank you guys so much for the comments, the likes, the support. As always, I need to say it every single time just because it's always prevalent. Like, you guys are awesome. And of course, as usual, have a great day.